As I continue to look at some of the characters of the New Testament, I'm talking today about two brothers, two in one if you like. So I'm going to read from Matthew chapter 4, verse 18, and then 21 to 22. Verse 18 sets the scene, if you like. As Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon called Peter and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. And then reading on in verses 21 to 22. Going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. They were in a boat with their father Zebedee, preparing their nets. Jesus called them, and immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. Now, James was the elder brother of John, and these two brothers were partners with Andrew and Peter in a fishing business in the northern Galilee. They were sons of Zebedee, and they seemed to own their own boats. And I think the conclusion we can come to from that is that they were quite prosperous. James and John were called by Jesus while they were going about their ordinary business. Now, I think that's important. Jesus calls people while they're doing what they ordinarily do. We heard from two people who chose to use their voices and the lyrics of songs as a way of communicating because that's what they do. And so James and John were called while they were about the fishing business. James would always be remembered as the first apostle to die as a martyr for the Christian faith. So he really became a very committed believer who belonged to Christ. John had a very special, close relationship with Jesus, so much so that when we get to the closing parts of the gospel, we're told in one that the Lord gave him special responsibility for his mother in the closing moments of his life on the cross. Now, you don't do that unless you have a special relationship with someone, to entrust your mother to them and to say to this person that their mother will be for them comfort, help and strength. Well, I think that tells you something of a special relationship. And they were part of a small group of three with Peter who were taken into the intimacy of relationship with Jesus Christ up on a mountain to experience something of the intimacy of the relationship that God in Christ wanted with his people. They may have well been hot-headed because they gained this nickname, the Sons of Thunder. Well, you don't call somebody a son of thunder unless he or she, if it's a daughter of thunder, has got a temper or you react very strongly. Now, this is confirmed by an incident when shortly after the Transfiguration, one of the great high moments in the Gospel, where Jesus reveals and is changed before them, and they see something of the presence of God. And we realize that their reaction was, if you like, developed in those moments. You see, Jesus had set his face to Jerusalem. He was determined. He was heading into the city. And Jesus and his disciples were passing through a Samaritan village. Now, when they got to that village, they were given a poor reception. The way people react to Jesus was different in different places, but they were given a very poor reaction. And this is what the suggestion was, and we read it in Luke chapter 9, 54 and 55. And I want to read it to you. When the disciples, James and John, saw this, that's the reaction of other people, they asked, "Lord, do you want us to call down fire from heaven to destroy them?" I mean, gosh, what a reaction. Here's Jesus going about teaching about love and generosity and kindness and compassionate attitudes to others. And these two disciples decided the best thing they could do was to call down fire from heaven on those who didn't like or agree. Well, clearly Jesus was not going to go for that kind of approach. But I tell you that because these are very real human beings. What do we learn from these brothers? Well, for me, one of the greatest messages is that God takes two very fiery brothers, ordinary men, and transforms their lives. I mean, that's so very important because for me, it is not religious people alone. It's not people who all speak the right language and act in the right way that God chooses to call. I expect if people were looking at the raw material that Jesus had with all the disciples and followers, and we're learning that week by week, it would not be these kind of people that you would have chosen. But for this man to become a first person to give up his life for following Christ, and for one to have a special relationship enough to be entrusted with the care of Jesus' mother. These are just people whose lives must have been so changed by the time they spent with Jesus, changed by listening to what he said, changed by what they saw in him, in his reactions with people, in his care, in his compassion. All of that had a great impact upon them, so much so that they not only became members in the gang, they became part of a special group that were taken into the closer interest of Jesus Christ. 2 sons of thunder who became great apostles. Nobody could have begun to even imagine that God would have used such people, and used them so powerfully in the life of the Christian church, so powerfully that people still talk about their message today, so powerfully that they're still thought of and taught. 2 people who were used marvelously by God and to such great effect.